Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The sound wasn't loud, but it was final. A dry click snapped that cut through the hum of the orbital concourse like a knife through paper. The alien woman's knee buckled as if someone had reached into her leg and switched it off. One moment she was a column of composure, tall, slate-skinned, uniform immaculate, insignia catching the station lights, and the next she was falling, palms slapping the deck to keep her face from hitting the floor. Her prosthetic struck the metal plating with a hollow ring. Something inside it rattled once, twice, then went still. People looked away. They did it with practiced grace, the way crowds always do when the problem in front of them is too personal, too costly, or too likely to demand that someone become responsible. The alien woman's jaw clenched hard enough to show tendons beneath her throat frill. She tried to rise on one leg, pride first, pain second, then froze as the prosthetic's ankle rolled wrong, the foot turning outward at an angle no limb should take. A soft tremor ran through her shoulders. She held it in. She held everything in. The concourse announcements continued like nothing had happened, docking schedules, customs notices, a cheerful reminder about hydration. A small child pointed. A parent pulled the child's hand down as if touching the air could spread the woman's misfortune. Mara HSU, 14 and son, brown from a childhood under open skies, stopped mid-step with a paper cup of station cocoa in her hand. She stared at the alien's leg like it was a loose bicycle chain. Then Mara did the most dangerous thing you could do in a public place full of strangers and rules. She approached. "Hey," she said, voice cutting through the polite distance. "Your leg's busted." The alien woman's eyes snapped up. They were a pale, reflective green with a ringed iris that made Mara think of tree rings, years recorded in concentric circles. "I am aware," the woman said. Her accent made each word precise, as if spoken from a manual. Mara crouched, careful, not touching. The prosthetic was sleek and beautiful, the kind of engineering that wanted to look like art. But beauty didn't matter when the ankle joint had collapsed and the knee refused to lock. "Did it just give out?" Mara asked. The woman's nostrils flared. "It has been compromised." "Can you stand?" "I can." The woman tried again and her face tightened. She could not. Mara took a sip of cocoa, then set the cup down on the deck like a person placing a tool within reach. Her eyes scanned the prosthetic the way her father scanned engines, not with judgment but with curiosity and intent. "You need a pin," Mara murmured, half to herself. "Or the bushings shredded, or the actuators jammed and it popped the bracket." The alien woman's gaze sharpened. "You are familiar with prosthetic assemblies," Mara shrugged. "I'm familiar with stuff that breaks." A pair of station security officers had noticed now. They were human with the slow, watchful posture of people trained to decide whether someone else's problem might become their problem. One of them raised a hand toward his comm. The alien woman saw it too. Her shoulders squared and the tremor vanished under discipline like a flame smothered by a lid. "Do not involve yourself," she said quickly to Mara, voice lowered. "This is an internal matter." Mara blinked. Internal to your leg, a flash of something, humor or pain or the ghost of both, touched the alien woman's eyes and disappeared. "It is a regulated device," the woman said. "Unauthorized modification is prohibited. Failure indicates," her throat worked. "It indicates I am unfit for current function." Mara frowned. "That's stupid." The alien woman's head tilted. "Pardon." "If a wheel falls off a cart, you don't throw away the cart and the person pushing it," Mara said. "You put the wheel back on." The alien woman's lips pressed into a line. She looked past Mara, toward the officers closing in, toward the crowd that had neatly widened the circle of emptiness around her. Her voice dropped further. "My designation is Halen of 3rd Bastion. I am attached to a diplomatic security detail. If I cannot walk, I am a liability. Liabilities are removed." Mara's frown deepened into something older than 14, something her dad's shop had taught her. Systems don't care about people unless people force them to. "Okay," Mara said. "My dad can fix that." Halen stared. Mara nodded toward the service corridor sign, the one marked maintenance access, authorized personnel only. "He's down in Bay 12. He's doing coolant line work for Port Authority. He fixes busted things for a living. He's basically allergic to leaving stuff broken." The officers reached the edge of the circle. "Miss," one said, careful, "step away from the visitor." Halen began to push herself upright again, panic tightening around her like wire. "I will comply," she said to the officers, voice steady by force. Mara stood, planted her feet, and looked up at the taller human officer with the fearlessness of someone who had grown up around heavy machinery and men who yelled when bolts stripped. She fell, Mara said. Her leg's broken, she needs help. We'll call medical, the officer replied. Helen's eyes flicked to Mara, then away. No medical, she said quickly. Not medical, the officer hesitated. Ma'am, if you're injured. It is not injury, Helen said. It is equipment. Mara muttered. It's both. The officer exhaled. Station protocol had sections for injuries, sections for equipment, and very few for the gray space where dignity lived. Helen's hand trembled now. Not from weakness, Mara recognized the tight shaking of someone holding themselves together with sheer will. Mara picked up her cocoa cup as if that made her look casual and harmless. Then she looked at Helen. Do you want to be taken somewhere you don't control, Mara asked, or do you want to come with me? Helen's throat moved. Her gaze flicked between the officers, the crowd, and Mara's open face. Your father, she said, as if testing the concept. He repairs regulated devices. Mara shrugged again. He repairs anything that breaks. We can tell him it's a chair leg if you want. A sound like a laugh escaped Helen before she could stop it. It came out rough, surprised, and it made her look younger. Very well, Helen said, voice tight, but if this causes diplomatic incident, it won't, Mara said. My dad hates incidents, he likes solutions. The officer opened his mouth to object. Mara lifted her wrist and flashed her port worker's dependent badge, her dad's name on it, authorization code for maintenance zones. He's assigned to Bay 12, I'm his runner, if you want to watch, but she's not staying on the floor. The officer took the badge, scanned it with his eyes, handed it back. He glanced at his partner. The partner gave a small, resigned shrug that said, not worth the paperwork. All right, the officer said, but we escort. Helen's pride flared. I do not require, you do, Mara said, then softened her voice. Just for walking space, people can be jerks. Helen didn't argue again. She set her hands on the deck, braced her good leg, and pushed up. Mara moved to her side without touching, ready to catch if needed. The prosthetic dragged useless. Helen's face remained carved from stone, but her breathing was fast. The officer gestured. This way. They moved down the corridor, away from the bright concourse and into the underbelly of the station, where the air smelled of lubricant and warm metal. The lighting shifted to utilitarian strips, and the walls bore the scuffs of carts and toolboxes. Mara led them with the confidence of someone who knew which doors stuck and which vents dripped condensation. She stopped at Bay 12, where a rolling door was half open and the sound of a grinder pulsed in steady bursts. Inside, Gabe HSU stood over a workbench, visor down, sparks flying in controlled arcs. He was broad-shouldered in the way of people who lifted and carried for a living, with hands that looked like they had argued with steel and won. He killed the grinder the moment he saw Mara. The sudden quiet made the bay feel like a held breath. Mara, he said, then noticed the officers, and then noticed the alien woman trying very hard not to lean on anything. His gaze dropped to the twisted prosthetic and his face changed, not to alarm but to focus. What happened? Gabe asked. Mara lifted her chin. Her leg broke. I told her you can fix it. Helen's eyes narrowed. Your offspring has made a claim. Gabe's mouth twitched. She makes a lot of claims. I only make true ones, Mara said. Gabe stepped closer slowly, palms open, the universal gesture of I'm not here to grab you. He addressed Helen as if she were a person first and a problem second. Ma'am, he said, voice calm, I'm Gabe. Can you sit? You're putting all your weight on your good limb and your back is compensating. That's going to hurt later. Helen looked like she would rather swallow a bolt than sit, but her posture wavered. Gabe gestured to a sturdy chair bolted to the floor. That one, it won't slide. Helen's gaze flicked to the officers. We'll observe, one said. Gabe nodded once, accepting the reality of watchers. Fine, observe, but give her space. The officer's jaw tightened, but he and his partner stepped back. Helen lowered herself into the chair with controlled grace that couldn't quite hide how much it cost her. Once seated, she kept her hands on her thighs as if afraid they might betray her. Gabe crouched to eye level with the prosthetic without touching it. May I? He asked, pointing. Helen hesitated, then inclined her head. You may inspect. You may not alter, Gabe looked up at her. If it's broken, inspection tells me what's broken, but fixing it means altering the broken state. That's kind of the point. Helen's jaw tightened. Regulation, Gabe exhaled through his nose. All right, we'll do this clean. I'll document everything I touch. Mara, get the holocam. Mara was already moving, dragging a battered camera unit from a drawer with the eagerness of someone who loved any excuse to be useful. Gabe's eyes returned to the prosthetic. What's the failure mode? Sudden lock, grind, did it slip? It made a sound, Halen said, reluctant. Then the ankle rotated beyond tolerance. The knee actuator failed to engage, Gabe nodded. Classic cascade, something in the ankle fails, loads go wrong, knee compensates, actuator gets overloaded. Halen stared at him. You speak as if it is familiar, Gabe shrugged. Mechanical systems do what mechanical systems do. Species doesn't change stress. He reached for a glove and put it on slowly, exaggerated, as if to show the officers and Halen that he respected the device. Then he traced a finger near the ankle joint without touching the sensor strip. Mara, he said, light. She angled a lamp. The prosthetic gleamed. Gabe leaned closer. See that hairline crack in the outer housing? Right there, that's not cosmetic. Halen's eyes widened despite herself. That crack was not present during last inspection. Probably started micro-fractured, Gabe said. Fatigue, how long have you had this unit? Halen's throat worked. 200 cycles. Gabe made a soft sound. That's not long. Halen's gaze slid away. It was reassigned. Older units are given to those whose performance metrics do not justify new allocations. Mara's hands clenched around the lamp handle. That's cruel. Halen's voice turned flat. It is efficient. Gabe's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Efficient systems break people, he said quietly, as if speaking to the universe rather than to Halen. He tapped the camera. Recording, Mara nodded. Recording, Gabe looked at Halen. I'm going to remove the outer housing to see the joint assembly. That's disassembly, not alteration. Are you okay with that? Halen hesitated, then gave a small, stiff nod. Proceed. Gabe worked like someone who had built a relationship with tools. Each movement was precise. He used a driver set with torque control, removing fasteners in a pattern that kept stress even. He laid each screw in a labeled tray as if the prosthetic were a patient on an operating table. The officers watched silent. When the housing came off, the failure became obvious. A shear pin snapped clean through, the internal bushing chewed into fragments. A thin smear of metallic dust coated the joint like gray pollen. Gabe clicked his tongue. No lubrication reservoir. And the bushing material is wrong for repetitive torsion. Halen's eyes narrowed. The manufacturer is certified by the central authority. Gabe looked up. Certified doesn't mean good, it means approved. Halen stiffened. That distinction is not. It is to me, Gabe said, because approved is paperwork. Good is whether you can walk without your leg collapsing. Halen's hands tightened on her thighs. Unauthorized repair could be construed as sabotage. Gabe wiped his glove on a rag, careful not to smear any sensor surfaces. Then we make it authorized. We call it emergency field stabilization to prevent injury. We keep documentation. We run load tests. We prove it's safer than the broken state. The officer nearest them cleared his throat. Port regulations permit emergency repairs to life support devices to prevent harm. Halen's head snapped toward him. This is not life support. The officer's expression was unreadable. Mobility aids fall under personal safety provisions. Halen looked as if she didn't know whether to be relieved or offended. Gabe pointed at the cracked housing. This unit isn't just broken, it's unsafe. If you keep using it, it will fail again. It could tear your socket interface. That's injury. Halen's breathing slowed. She stared at the exposed joint like it was a confession. What would you do? She asked, voice very quiet. Gabe's answer came without hesitation. Replace the shear pin with something rated for your load. Rebuild the bushing with a polymer composite that handles torsion and heat. Add a micro reservoir for lubrication. Reinforce the housing with a sleeve, and recalibrate your knee actuator so it isn't compensating for bad ankle geometry. Halen blinked. You would improve it. Gabe gave a small shrug. If I'm touching it, I'm not sending you back out with a patch job. Halen's gaze flicked to Mara as if Mara had somehow predicted this exact moment. Mara just stared back, stubborn and hopeful. Halen's shoulders rose and fell. A decision moved through her, visible in the way her jaw unclenched. Proceed, Halen said. Emergency stabilization, document, test. If questioned, I will state I requested it. The officers exchanged a glance. The first one nodded once as if sealing the moment into an official memory. Gabe's posture loosened slightly. All right, he said. Mara, toolkit B and grab the composite stock. Mara dashed to a cabinet, yanking it open like a treasure chest. Yes, Gabe worked fast but never rushed. He measured Helen's socket alignment, asked her to shift her weight in tiny increments while he checked the interface pressure. He listened when she described where the prosthetic usually pinched, where it usually felt loose. He took those details like sacred data. Helen, for her part, watched with the intensity of someone watching their own fate being rewritten. At one point, Gabe paused and looked at her directly. "This might feel different," he warned. "Better, but different. Your gait pattern will adjust." Helen's voice was cautious. "Adjustment is permitted," Mara snorted. "You talk like your whole life is a checklist." Helen's eyes flicked to her. "Your species speaks like rules are optional," Mara grinned. "Only the stupid ones." For a heartbeat, the bay held something like warmth. Gabe machined a new bushing on a small lathe, the tool singing under controlled pressure. He fashioned a lubrication reservoir from a repurposed micro-fluid capsule originally meant for station coolant diagnostics, then sealed it with a gasket he cut by hand. The cracked housing worried him. He could have replaced it, but station stock didn't include alien prosthetic parts. So he did what he always did when the perfect part didn't exist. He made one. He shaped a reinforcement sleeve from a titanium alloy strip, heated it, and fitted it around the housing like a brace. He drilled anchor points, riveted with precision, then coated the edges to avoid catching fabric or skin. Helen watched the process, eyes wide with a mixture of fascination and fear. "You are altering certified geometry," she murmured. "I'm correcting a design flaw," Gabe replied. "And I'm doing it in a way that distributes stress instead of concentrating it." "That sleeve is going to stop the crack from propagating," Helen swallowed. "If it holds." Gabe met her gaze. "It will hold, but we won't rely on confidence, we'll test." When the prosthetic was reassembled, it looked subtly different, still sleek, but now with a visible reinforcement band that made it look like it had scars. Mara ran her fingers over the sleeve with reverence. "It looks tougher." "It is tougher," Gabe said. He adjusted the calibration port, running a diagnostic sequence with a handheld scanner he'd modified years ago to speak in multiple machine languages. It chirped, then displayed a set of readings. "Actuator load is down 12%, he said. "Ankle response is stable." Helen's hands hovered over her lap. "May I stand?" Gabe nodded. "Slow, use the rail." Helen placed her hands on the chair arms, shifted forward, and stood. For a moment, she froze, waiting for betrayal. The prosthetic held, the ankle stayed true, the knee engaged with a soft, controlled whir. Helen's eyes widened. She took a careful step, then another. Her posture changed in small, profound ways, shoulders leveling, spine lengthening, weight redistributing as if her body remembered what symmetry felt like. Mara let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "See," she said softly. "Told you." Helen took a third step, a fourth. Her movements grew smoother, more confident. Then the bay door hissed and a new voice sliced through the air. "Stop." A figure in alien uniform stepped into the bay, taller than Helen, with a crest that marked rank. Two attendants followed, their eyes sharp, scanning for irregularities. Helen went still. The newcomer's gaze dropped to Helen's leg, to the reinforcement sleeve, to the human tools on the bench. "What has been done?" the rank holder demanded. Helen's throat worked. The old fear returned like a hand closing around her lungs. Gabe straightened, wiping his hands. He didn't flinch. "Emergency stabilization," he said evenly. "Structural failure in the ankle joint, unsafe device. We rebuilt worn components and reinforced cracked housing. We have full documentation and test results." The alien officer's eyes narrowed. "You are not certified," Gabe nodded. "Correct, I'm competent." The alien's crest flared slightly, a sign of anger, Mara guessed. "Competence is irrelevant." "Protocol ensures." "Protocol failed her," Mara snapped, surprising even herself. "Your protocol put her on a leg that cracked after 200 cycles." Silence fell like a dropped tool. Helen's eyes flicked to Mara in alarm, as if Mara had just challenged gravity. Gabe's hand lifted, slightly calm, steady, telling Mara to breathe. The alien officer's gaze shifted to Mara. "Child, you speak out of station." Mara lifted her chin higher. "I speak out of not wanting people to fall on the floor and be treated like trash." The officer's attendants tensed. Gabe moved a half step forward, placing himself between Mara and the alien official without making it look like a threat. "If this is going to become a jurisdiction fight," Gabe said, "we can do it with data, not posturing. The repaired unit is safer than the broken unit. We can demonstrate load tolerance right now." The alien officer's eyes narrowed. "Demonstrate." Gabe gestured to the test rig in the corner, a hydraulic press used for station component stress tests. We'll apply torsion loads to a matched dummy joint assembly. Same material, same sleeve reinforcement. Will exceed operational stress by a safety factor. You can watch. The alien officer hesitated. Protocol liked controlled environments. This was a maintenance bay with a human mechanic offering proof like a wager. But proof was hard to refuse in front of witnesses. Proceed, the officer said, clipped. Gabe moved with efficient calm. He had Mara fetch the dummy assembly he'd built while machining. He always made extras because failure modes loved surprises. He mounted it in the rig, set sensors, and ran the test. The press whined. The assembly held. He increased load. It held. He pushed beyond expected operational stress. The sensors beeped warnings. The assembly did not fail. Gabe stopped the rig and turned the display outward. Safety factor achieved, he said. And here's the before and after actuator load on Halen's unit. Reduced strain means longer lifespan. The alien officer stared at the data like it had personally insulted tradition. Halen stood still, breathing shallowly. The repair sleeve on her prosthetic seemed to glow under the bay lights, not from beauty but from meaning. The alien officer's jaw tightened. You have violated certification protocol, they said, but the words lacked bite now. However, you have prevented imminent injury. They looked at Halen. Halen of Third Bastion, did you request this? Halen's voice steadied with effort. I did. The officer held her gaze. The attendants watched, silent. Finally, the officer exhaled a controlled release. This unit will be examined by our technical core. Gabe nodded once. Fine, but she keeps it until you produce a safer replacement. Removing it would endanger her. The alien officer's crest twitched, but they did not argue. They turned their gaze to Mara, and something in their expression softened, just barely, confusion perhaps at a child who spoke as if compassion outranked hierarchy. You, the officer said to Mara, you stated your father could fix it. Mara swallowed, suddenly aware of how small she was in a bay full of adults and consequences. Yeah, she said anyway, because he can. The officer's gaze returned to Gabe. Human repair culture is undisciplined. Gabe's mouth twitched. We call it adaptable. The alien officer studied the reinforced prosthetic again, then made a small, formal gesture, acknowledgement, not gratitude, but something adjacent. Halen, they said, you will return with us, walking. Halen's shoulders lifted as if she were reclaiming height she had lost. Yes, she said. Before leaving, Halen turned toward Gabe and Mara. Her voice, when it came, was quieter than before. Your intervention has altered my status trajectory, she said. I do not know whether it will be accepted. Mara shrugged. Then they'll have to accept it because you're not broken. Halen's eyes shimmered with something she refused to name. You speak as if that is obvious. It is, Mara said. Sometimes grown-ups make it complicated. Gabe leaned down slightly, meeting Halen at eye level again. Listen, he said, if they give you trouble, you tell them you've got documentation and independent safety testing. You tell them the humans have copies. You tell them the Port Authority officers witnessed it. Halen blinked. You would involve yourselves further. Gabe's expression was flat with stubbornness. I don't like bullies. I don't care what planet they're from. Halen held his gaze, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. Understood. As the alien official in attendance escorted Halen toward the corridor, Halen walked with measured steps. Then, just before she disappeared, she did something that made Mara's throat tight. She increased her pace. Not a run, not quite, but the beginnings of one. A test of trust in her own body. A quiet rebellion against the idea that she should move carefully to avoid being discarded. The prosthetic held, the sleeve held, Halen held. When the bay door slid shut, the workshop seemed suddenly too quiet. Mara let out a long breath. Dad, she said, voice small now that the pressure was gone. Did we just start an interstellar argument? Gabe wiped his hands on a rag, then reached out and ruffled Mara's hair, gentle despite his rough fingers. Maybe, he said, but we also kept someone from getting hurt. Mara looked at the workbench, at the labeled screws, at the grease stains on the floor. They acted like she'd be thrown away. Gabe's face hardened. Some systems treat people like parts, he said. Humans have done it too. We're not innocent, but we can choose better, one repair at a time. Mara nodded slowly. So we did the right thing. Gabe's gaze went to the bay door, as if he could see through it to wherever Halen was walking. Yeah, he said, we did. Mara picked up her cocoa cup from the floor, took a sip, and grimaced. It's cold. Gabe chuckled once. Some things you can't fix. Mara looked up at him. Bet you'd try. Gabe's smile was tired but real. Yeah, he admitted, I probably would. Outro HFY closing beat. 2 weeks later, a sealed packet arrived at Bay 12. It bore alien markings and port authority stamps and the kind of legal language that tried to sound neutral while admitting reluctantly that reality had won. Inside was a formal notice. The central authority had commissioned a joint working group on field-resilient mobility systems, citing unexpectedly effective human methodology. There was also a smaller document, not official, no stamps, no insignia, just a simple line in translated text: "I walked without fear today." Your repair did not only hold my weight, it held my future. Halen of 3rd Bastion Mara taped that note above the workbench where her dad kept his torque charts. Because in a galaxy full of protocols, treaties, and proud civilizations, sometimes the most human act wasn't conquest or dominance. Sometimes it was kneeling beside a stranger on a cold metal floor and saying with absolute certainty, "My dad can fix that."